All right. Shalom. Now, you may say, what does shalom mean, right? It means all kinds of different things. I was saying this the other day to somebody. Shalom, of course, means hello. It means goodbye. You want to be careful how you use it. You don't want people to think you're leaving when you're coming. All right. It's kind of the joke. Shalom means wholeness, though. Really, that's what it means. It means wholeness. And the world in which we live is very broken. Usually when I come, I speak mostly from the text. And if you happen to have been here in the first service, I'm going to try and do a completely different sermon with the same point. Because it's just so darn emotional what I'm going to talk about. But I want to give a bit of an update before I speak. Again, my name is Kirk Levy. I'm the Director of Devarment Messianic Jewish Outreach in Skokie, Illinois, and the Rabbi of Devarment Messianic Synagogue. What do we do with Devarment? We talk to Jewish people about the truth of who Yeshua is as the Jewish Messiah. I wish I could tell you that all kinds of Jewish people are coming to believe in Jesus. It's just not true. And I would say that a lot of people are hyping. There's not that much interest in God in our world, really, the God of the Bible. So it would make sense there's not that much interest in the Jewish community to believe that Jesus is the Messiah. But some do believe, and it's always wonderful to see God moving in the lives of people. Last year we saw this one kid, Leon, come to faith. Leon comes from a Russian Jewish background, screwed up kid, screwed up background, divorced parents, all kind of normal stuff that occurs in the Russian Jewish community. And I don't even know how, he showed up at our camp like 7 years ago. He was like 13, 12 years of age, maybe longer. Anyway, he was the troubled kid. I spent more time with him. At one point, he was so messed up, we had to sit him in the kitchen. And then we had to watch him constantly because we were afraid he was going to try and kill himself with a knife. So needless to say, I'll never forget that kid. So what was wonderful is this last year, out of nowhere, he makes a profession of faith, became a believer. And he's in college, or he just started college. And so he's still got his issues, but it's like he made a decision that Jesus is indeed the Messiah, and he's going to believe in him, and he's going to follow God with his life. And so he's become a believer. So I'm very encouraged by that. If you've ever worked with youth, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, is this kid really becoming a believer, or is he just, kind of going along with the flow, And I think with Leon, God is really doing a work, and I think he has come to faith. Keep praying for him. He just changed schools, so it makes it a little harder for him to come to services. And he plays volleyball. That's why he changed schools. Plays volleyball. No, that's fine. I'm not trying to diss volleyball. I like volleyball. I'm just too short for it. But he helps with our children's program called McKimmy. He's very committed to coming for that, which is wonderful. He just started that too this year. My son's been working with him. It's kind of a discipleship thing, really. But also, just keep praying for Leon. I would also say, yesterday was amazing. We had several unsaved Jewish guys come in to show up at the synagogue, people, men and women. One from an Orthodox Jewish, he's an Orthodox Jewish young adult. And that's kind of very unusual. He walked the services from West Rogers Park, if you know where that is, over to where we are in Skokie, and expressed general openness. It was surprising. Now, it could be that he's dating a girl who was a part of our synagogue and who left, and I'm not sure if she's a believer, but they were both there. I don't think she's a believer, but they were both there, but she wanted him to come. So we'll see what happens. But you can pray for him. His name is Max, which is pretty generic, so that's safe. I know you stream this thing. So I would say that a thing I'd ask you to pray for, because we are very involved in what goes on within the Jewish community. We're even with our very blunt profession of Yeshua faith, we're pretty integrated in a lot of ways, which is very unusual. And I just got a notification between services that a rabbi who was a friend of mine just passed away. And we've been engaged with him now for 25 years. This particular rabbi, years ago, there was a major opposition to our work with children in Skokie, and he put the word out in the Jewish community to leave us alone. And it all stopped. He's a very prominent rabbi. Not a believer in Yeshua. We would talk about Yeshua faith. He never came to faith, as best I know. I just saw him last week, and his health is failing. It was his son, I was talking to somebody, it's his son grandson we visited in Israel this last summer, who's just been seriously injured in the war. So the whole thing, it's very sad. I got to change my travel plans and be at the funeral. If you think of it, pray that we would have an opportunity to share, or just at least have a presence, because we know most of the family at this point. So it's interesting how things happen. Otherwise, we appreciate your prayers, your support of this ministry that God has blessed us with. I am actively looking to identify people to help me. I'm 57 years of age, and I'm really tired of doing all these different things. And I'm not so good at half the things that I do anyway. So I mentioned the Schubach Library, which again I forgot to put flyers out for because I was answering questions. But hopefully, God willing, we have two possible guys moving to Chicago. One for sure is coming, and these two guys are men that I've mentored through the years. Didn't leave in the faith, but mentored them. They're both PhDs in theology. You might say, what does that mean, PhD? It means piled higher and deeper. That's what it means. And these are two young Jewish believers that are incredibly gifted teachers. They've helped me with certain projects through the years, and I'm praying that one, if not both of them, will be actively engaged in the work. Now, they both have real jobs in universities, okay? But they're both believers, and God willing, you can pray that they'll both buy houses in Skokie so that they're easily available for my access, okay? But hopefully they'll help with this ministry, which I really need help with. And then I really want to experiment with social media outreach. If you're like me, you hate social media, okay? But we're all on it, aren't we? Every one of us. Don't lie to me. Don't try to hide your TikTok account from me. All right? This stuff is real. If you want to reach out to people today, you want to communicate, social media is critically important. Unless you happen to be extremely wealthy, then you just buy an hour show on CBS, ABC, NBC, Fox, whatever, and people don't watch those anyway anymore. But social media, people are drawn to. And so there's a girl, again, a Jewish believer that we mentored for several years who just graduated with a graduate education in this, has done it in the not-for-profit world, and she married a nice Jewish boy that I know. And so anyway, I'm hoping that maybe in this new life, because she's now a graduate and doesn't have an actual job, that she might be interested in allocating a certain amount of time to experimenting and outreach using this field, especially local stuff. Because I think that you can't reach the world sometimes. You really can't. We can talk about reaching the world, but you know where you have to reach in the world? Where you live. All right? So I want to experiment with that and see what God will do. So just pray that these things might come about, because we want to reach Jewish people. We want to figure out how to, meet people we don't know. We know the people we know, and we keep adding people we didn't know before. But it's the people that I really don't know that are in my neighborhood and in my area that maybe we could reach through social media outreach. It makes a difference, especially working with children, youth, and young adults and families, because all these mothers especially are on social media, Okay. A pastor asked me to give an update, talk about, anti-Semitism, what's going on. Usually I come and I preach, and this is a terrible topic. I mean, it's a horrible topic. Yesterday was the International Day of Holocaust Remembrance. Now, within the Jewish community, we don't really think about it that much. It's actually something that was established. It's the day of Auschwitz's liberation, right? That's the reason why the date was selected. We remember Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Memorial, in May. In the spring, in the Jewish community, it follows Passover, and it's just a series of events dates that the Jewish community selected for remembrance. So, but this year, because of everything going on, it's poignant to be reminded that this event occurred not that long ago, and that, as we're going to see a video in a moment, that a lot of people seem to have already forgotten about it. And there's also a whole movement to deny it. And it's a very sad thing. We have a Holocaust survivor in our congregation, and for him, it's real every day. Real every day. This is the way it is. There's like 250,000 survivors left, most of them children, many of them hidden A few of them, like Stephen in our congregation, actually literally suffering the horrors of trying to stay alive in the midst of the insanity. So we're going to show a quick video, and this morning I'm going to basically focus on this topic. I'll talk a little bit from the book of Esther in regards to it, but I'm going to mix it up a little bit from this morning. So if you were here and you heard the first sermon, this will be a little different. I like to do that. Keeps everybody guessing. All right.
The Holocaust is widely regarded as the greatest evil ever carried out by any government in history. Given the magnitude of this crime, it's disturbing that so many people, especially those under 40, know little or nothing about it. According to a recent study, young people have a worrying lack of basic Holocaust knowledge. So here are some facts that everyone should know. The Holocaust was a relatively recent event. It took place between 1939, when Germany invaded Poland, sparking World War II, and 1945, when Germany surrendered. During those years, the Nazi regime headed by Adolf Hitler set out to murder every Jew in the world, starting with every Jew in Europe. One of the things that made Nazi anti-Semitism different from other forms of ethnic hatred was that Hitler drew no distinctions among Jews. He regarded every Jew as an enemy worthy of death, Jewish children no less than Jewish adults. The SS, the Nazis' elite troops, would line up Jewish children next to parents and grandparents and have firing squads shoot them all. When the Nazis decided that murdering Jews by gunfire was too slow, they opened death camps in which they installed gas chambers. The Nazi SS would force hundreds of Jews into these chambers and pipe in poisonous gas. After about 15 minutes of hell, all the people inside would be dead, suffocated. The Nazis then forced other Jews to extract the bodies from the gas chambers, and as a final indignity, examined the dead Jews' mouths to pull out gold teeth. They would examine hands as well. When rings were too tight, they would simply cut off fingers. They would also cut off the victim's hair, which German businesses used for mattress stuffing. Nothing was wasted. What explains the Nazis' murderous obsession with the Jews? After all, the Jews were a very small portion of Germany's population as well as the world's population. In 1938, just prior to World War II, there were about 17 million Jews, less than 1% of the world's population of 2 billion. The Nazis murdered 6 million Jews, 2/3 of Europe's Jews, and 1/3 of all the Jews in the world. Why? The most commonly offered explanation is racism. The Nazis were racists and hated Jews and all other non-Aryans. Was Hitler a racist? Yes. Did he speak in derogatory terms of people other than Aryans? Yes. Is that why he murdered the Jews? No. It's easily proven that racism alone wasn't the primary reason for Nazi Jew hatred. Throughout World War II, the Nazis allied themselves with the non-Aryan Japanese. The Nazis also allied themselves with the non-Aryan Arabs, whose anti-Semitism made them natural allies of the Nazis. And while the Nazis certainly denigrated black people, they made no effort to persecute, let alone exterminate them. So, though Nazi anti-Semitism was racist, it wasn't solely or even primarily the product of racism. There was something much deeper behind this hatred. What infuriated Hitler and the Nazis about the Jews was their influence, moral, intellectual, and economic. If Aryans were the superior race, how could Jews be so influential? Hitler believed that the greatest battle on earth was between the Aryan and the Jew. Therefore, Aryans could prevail only if the Jews were destroyed. The Nazis blamed the Jews for creating everything they hated: communism and capitalism, Judaism and Christianity, which he regarded as a Jewish creation. Jesus was a Jew, the apostles were Jews, and 2/3 of the Christian Bible is the Jews' Bible. Hitler yearned for Germany to return to its pre-Christian pagan roots. Tragically, however, while Hitler hated Christianity, most of Germany's Christians didn't hate Hitler. Nazi Jew hatred was so all-consuming that killing Jews was ultimately more important to Hitler than winning the war. Even while the Nazis were losing the critical Battle of Stalingrad, trains that could have been used to aid German troops were diverted to transport Jews to the death camps. For Hitler and the Nazis, it wasn't enough to murder the Jews of Europe. They also had to be tortured and humiliated. Jews were beaten and starved to death, burned and frozen to death, made the subjects of hideous medical experiments with no anesthesia, and nearly all the 6 million were stripped naked prior to being killed. A number like 6 million is an abstraction. It lacks flesh and blood. It's therefore impossible to fully grasp the horror of what the Nazis did. So, it might help to think of it as Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Judith Miller has. We must remind ourselves that the Holocaust was not 6 million. It was 1 plus 1 plus 1. To this day, if you ask any student or professor on a college campus who was the most evil person to ever live, they'd almost certainly say Adolf Hitler. And what was Hitler's most evil act? The murder of 6 million Jews. The Holocaust. Of course, no one today would want to associate themselves with that evil. Would they? I'm Emily Austin for Prager University.
That last question, would anyone want to associate with the evil? People are associating with it in different ways. I mean, one, they're denying it. They just say, oh, it didn't really exist. It didn't really happen. Yeah, Jews died, other people died too. They're denying the whole plan of action that Hitler and his cronies had. But why would they have that plan of action? I love the way they describe it. In essence, they're hinting at what really is the reason. This is a spiritual issue. Satan hates the Jewish people. All right? Satan hates all those associated with God. So anti-Semitism not only the end isn't just against Jewish people, it's against you as believers in Jesus, ultimately. I mean, you realize that Hitler also was attacking real believers, all those who wouldn't go along with his craziness. We live in a world that is physical, but don't we fight a spiritual battle? I think sometimes we forget that. Let's take a look at the book of Ephesians real quick. Ephesians chapter 6. I'm using your Pew Bible, so this is page 153, I guess, in the New Testament. Is that? Oh, they did that. Ephesians chapter 6, beginning in verse 10. It says, finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. How do you be strong in the Lord? Know him. How do you know him? Read his scripture. Do what it says. Taste and see that the Lord is good. How do you know that the Lord is good? You live a life of faith. You apply the biblical text, and it strengthens you. So, be strong in the Lord. Take your faith seriously. I see evangelical Christianity as a bunch of wimps, spiritual wimps. Hopefully not you. I have a good friend of mine who's going to be giving a lecture at the Schubach Library, Dr. Joel Willits. He's at North Park University. He teaches New Testament, and he's a very active evangelical, and he says evangelicalism's in real trouble. People are not taking their faith very seriously. Maybe it's because we're comfortable. We're complacent. Be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Put on the full armor of God so that you will be able to stand firm against the schemes of the devil, the adversary, Satan. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the world forces of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places. Do we really believe in this reality? I love saying this to my congregation. We are so secular. I say this to a bunch of Jews because I'm like, hey, guys, you got to live Jewish life, keep Shabbat, keep kosher, do these things because all of these things are identity markers for us as Jews. But all of us as Jews, we just want to be like everybody else. As believers in Jesus, are we just secular? We roll into services most Sundays, and then we roll out and live like everybody else. Our faith is not that deep. It's not that serious. We're not really committed to the Lord our God. We're kind of more part of a club. We kind of show up for events when it's convenient. That's a lot of what American Christianity is today, folks. Hope that's not you. Because the truth of the matter is that this evil is alive and well. And what's fascinating is that this evil controls the world. This evil controls most of our nation. Americans aren't becoming more Christian. They're not really becoming more religious unless you count spirituality, which isn't real faith. We're more and more becoming a tool in the hands of the evil one. We have a spiritual battle we're fighting against these horrible, evil influences. This is what's going on in our world today. This is why there is a rise in anti-Semitism. You know, the reason they showed this video, they pointed out those under 40. I mean, the biggest spike and obvious shocker is what's going on college campuses, right? You guys probably are all watching it. It's like, what's wrong with these kids? They all are putting on like Palestinian flags and basically saying this and that. Why? It's because they're so overwhelmingly secular and they're bought into a lot of things. I mean, I'm not going to use all the buzzwords, but you know what I'm talking about. It's this mindset that people have adopted that is anti-biblical. It's anti-God. And it's leading them in a direction where the evil one wants them to go. And right now, the focus is on Israel. Why the focus on Israel? Because Israel is God's chosen people. I mean, as Tevye said it so well in Fiddler on the Roof, maybe it's time to choose somebody else. I mean, for Jews in America, this is the Golden Medina. This is the best place in the world. You know why? Because you can make money, you can live a happy life, people will generally treat you well. In Europe, it wasn't like that. It was never like that in Europe. Outside of Europe, in Muslim countries, Jews weren't generally killed for being Jewish, but they were generally suppressed or kept at a lower level. All right? But here in America, if you work hard and you get an education, you can do well. You know? Satan hates us, though. And so this anti-Semitism, it just exists. Here, turn with me to Genesis 12. As I said, it's a different message. Genesis 12. I won't cry so easily this way. I never cry in a sermon. I cried this morning in the sermon. Not good. Bad for my reputation. Genesis 12, page 8. This is an amazing text. I can't unpack it here, but it really goes to the reason why Satan hates the Jewish people. It says, Genesis 12, verse 1, it says, "Now the Lord said to Avram, Lech lecha, get up and go. Go forth from your country, from your relatives, from your father's house. Separate yourself from what you have known. Go to the land that I will show you, the land of Canaan. And I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you, and make your name great." Isn't that sound great? God's going to bless us. We're going to have a great name. We're going to be able to get the best parking space in every single parking lot. We always get to go first in line at Disneyland or wherever we're going. Great America. Oh, just a second. It doesn't end there, does it? God's going to make a great nation out of Abraham's descendants, bless them, make their name great, but so you shall be a blessing. God said to Abraham, I'm going to do something unique in you, and especially through you for your descendants. Your descendants will eventually become a national unit that I will bless so that they will bless others. Now, people often think, well, of course, the Messiah is going to come, right? Messiah will come, and therefore the people will be blessed of the Messiah. True. Ultimately, Besorah, the good news is that God wants to redeem his creation. By the way, I want to mention, the gospel, Besorah, the good news, isn't just so that you can avoid going to hell. That's a very cheap understanding of what it is. I think there's a lot of people that say, oh, I believe in Jesus because I don't go to hell. Mark that guy down, he's saved. You know what? That guy's just as lost as when he began, because that's not the gospel. The gospel is God has made it possible for you to come into right relationship with God through your faith in Messiah Yeshua's atonement so that God can repair the world in which we're living. God wants to repair his creation. And that relationship with God is what it's all about. God makes it possible for you individually, and then You and another person, and ultimately when God sees that things come out, Messiah will come back and all will be repaired. Okay, that's ultimately a short on what is the Bessarah, the good news. It's not a get out of hell free card. In fact, if you're truly a believer, you go, thank you, God, that you have saved me. Let me live my life your way. Oh, that was a great testimony. We didn't get a chance to talk yet. I used to park cars at Rush and Walton and Oak and anyway, faces, all that fun stuff. All right. But Israel was chosen, not because they're great and awesome. God chose the descendants of Abraham so that through him he would be bringing this Bessarah to fruition, and so that they would be a testimony of his faithfulness. How many times in the Exodus period did God basically say to Moses, I'm going to destroy these people? They don't listen, they complain, they always want ribeyes on Friday nights. What's wrong with these people? I'm going to make a greater nation through you. And Moses says, oh, no. Have you seen my sons? No. God, have mercy. What will others say? Oh, God's not big enough to get them out of Egypt and to Canaan. They're so bad. See, God can do that. Oh, no, God, have mercy on them. Show your greatness. And God did. And it's through the Jewish people, it says, that you shall be a blessing. It's interesting. The one stat, 2 billion people in the world, 1.1% basically Jewish. You know there are like 8 billion people in the world today? The Jewish community hasn't even recovered its size to what we were pre-Second World War. It's about, maybe if you stretch it, maybe there's 6 million Jewish people in America. Maybe, I think it's close to 7 million Jewish people now. That's 13 million Jewish people. In Israel, maybe 15 million Jewish people if you add everybody up. We haven't recovered. And we're a much smaller percentage now than we were then. That's on my mind. Why do people bother with us? Leave us alone. We're small. We're insignificant. Go pick on somebody else. Like, maybe go talk to the Houthis for a few minutes. Go talk to them. Or the Iranians. Why don't you go talk to them? There's more of them than us. But no, it's always those Jews. And we're such a small percentage. And then we like to put, we've actually done some good things, if you like penicillin, I know we all hate that instant messaging stuff, but that wasn't Israeli. There's so many things. Mobileye, so many things the Jewish people have done, just a couple of them. And for this, you hate us. What have we done? It's interesting the way they talk about it in the video. And someone pointed out there's so many other videos. Why in the world do people hate Jewish people? It's a mystery. And yet the answer is really simple. It's because of Satan, the evil one. I mentioned this, I became a believer when I was 15 and a half. I mentioned this in the first service. Became a believer when I was 15 and a half, and the guys who helped me come to faith went to this Christian school. So I'm going to go to this Christian school. My father said, go ahead, I'm not helping you at all. So I paid my way. They were helpful, but I found a job. I paid my way to go to the Christian school. And I told one of the kids at the Christian school that I'm Jewish, and he looked at me and called me a kike. I don't know if you know what that means, but it's not positive. Like, what is this? Where does he hear that? These are Christian kids, right, at the Christian school. Well, of course, he heard it from his parents. Where else would he hear it? Later on, I worked, the job I got was a Kentucky Fried Chicken. I'm a proud cooker of chicken. I was a biscuit guy. Biscuit guys, too, Anyway, I did it all there over about 2.5 years. And I was a great employee. My manager loved me. The owner loved me and worked really hard. And then I went to college and came back. He gave me my first summer. I came back, worked for him a couple of months. And it was during that time that I just casually mentioned that I was Jewish. And he looked at me, kind of shocked, and he said, wow, if I'd known you were Jewish, I wouldn't have hired you. Like, really? I used a Yiddish word to describe him at that point. But what is with people? Why the anti-Semitism? It's evilness, just evil that exists. The evil one hates us and wants to continue to foment that evil in the hearts of other people. It's not something that's new. It's been going on a long time. You all remember the book of Esther and the story of Purim? Maybe not. You know, the Jewish people, I mean, when you really look at the ancient Near East, Israel has always been extremely insignificant. People like to read the book of 1st and 2nd Samuel, well, especially 2nd Samuel and portions of Kings and Chronicles, where it talks about David and Solomon and how big and the empire, or the Davidic empire, the kingdom. Guys, it was really small. It was really small. I mean, David evidently had a reputation, don't mess with me. If you mess with me, I'll bring my boys and we're going to, but it was more influence. I mean, anybody been to Israel? A few of you should have. Yes. Few more of you should consider coming with me. Trip was canceled this year, but next year, 2025. But when you're in Israel and you look at the extent of what was David's kingdom, it was actually pretty small. God always does great things in small packages. I think this is the biggest problem we face as believers today. We always got to think everything's got to be big and significant. Not necessarily. The Jewish people are there, and then, of course, because of disobedience to God, they suffer exile. All right, that's what occurred. The Babylonians first, of course, the north with the Assyrians, and then with the Babylonians. There were at least three exiles. You had the first with Daniel, took place around 605. It was really a common thing. A nation would come in and basically say, well, I'm the big boy in town. You need to do what I say. And just to make sure you're going to do what I'm going to say, I'm going to take key children from the leadership. You're going to come with me and I'm going to educate you in the ways of the new kingdom. We're the new boys in town. That's Daniel and his friends. These are all aristocracy. A darn good chance they're all descendants of King David. Okay? That's the way it would have worked. These are key people, young people, 12, 13, 14 years of age, hostages. Second time around, Jehoiakim is not getting the message that he needs to just listen to the big boys, the new guys in town. So he just conveniently dies. And Nebuchadnezzar shows up. Jehoiakim basically says, at the age of 8, I give up, comes out with his mother, and they take another set of hostages. That's what's going on there. These are individuals who are key, not just like political leaders, but key individuals, probably also people that knew how to do things. So it was a larger group of people, one of whom is Ezekiel. Anybody read the book of Ezekiel? So this is about 597 or so. And so they all go now to Babylonia. And then in 586, it's everybody out of the pool, okay? You're all done. Nebuchadnezzar comes by and absolutely destroys Jerusalem, kills everybody but a few people and exiles the rest. And the land is just empty. What's the future? There should be no future, really. Story should end. But about 70 years later, a small portion of the Jewish people return. They're given the opportunity, Cyrus's edict, to return to the land. And so they come back to the land, they rebuild the temple, first under the leadership of Shealtiel, who is a descendant of Jehoiakim, and then Zerubbabel, who's also a descendant of Jehoiakim, reestablished the temple. Ezra comes along a little bit later, reestablishes the worship. He really kind of cleans up, makes sure things are operating based on what the scriptures teach. Then Nehemiah comes along approximately 445 BC. Okay, so about 70 years or so, or 80 years after the first returnees. And he kind of like slaps people around and tells them to get their act together, rebuild the walls, all that fun stuff. I love Nehemiah. All right. They're just a small little group, though. Maybe there's 40,000, 50,000. There are many more people back in Babylonia, all of them living along the Tigris-Euphrates River and very influential in the land of of the Persian Empire at this point. Remember, Nehemiah is a major character in the governmental structure of the Persian Empire. The cupbearer to the king is like the prime minister. He's like a key fellow. How did he get in that role? I guess Daniel did a good job, right? Who knows? A little bit of news. In the book of Acts, remember Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch? Everybody figures he's a Gentile, right? Forget it. He's a Jewish official in that kingdom in Ethiopia. Just read the text. The first non-Jew comes to faith is this guy, Cornelius. God has allowed Jewish people to be in places of importance in governments. Just like Joseph is seen as being trustworthy and good and is elevated, that seems to be happening a lot. Until this guy Haman shows up on the scene. Haman, this is the book of Esther. We're going to read a little bit from the book of Esther here. So turn over chapter 4. Chapter 4. So you've got hundreds of thousands of Jews in Persia, a significant minority group in Persia with key people in positions of government, more than likely, based on what we've talked about already. But Haman, the Agagite, and there's a whole thing about that, but Haman basically gets snubbed. Right? Mordecai won't bow down to him. And the reason is he doesn't bow down to anybody but God, right? That's the idea. So Mordecai offends this fellow, who in the story becomes really right buddy-buddy with the emperor, with the king. And Artaxerxes, or Ahasuerus, as we say, he's just a knucklehead in the text. Complete knucklehead in the text. Now, in reality, he was not, okay, but in the text, he's a knucklehead. He gets, in essence, talked into this whole situation, and it's really serious. Back then, you didn't have to go like to court. I mean, people could actually be killed just at the whim of the king. You also have to remember that there's a little benefit, because if you kill people, they don't need their stuff no more, so the crown gets it all. So there's all this financial benefit that occurs if the crown decides to eliminate a few 100,000 people. What do you need them for anyway? Yet this is a very serious situation. That's what the story is conveying. And it all reminds us of a very important point. So let me read the text. Esther chapter 4, verse 13. Chapter 4, verse 13. It says, then Mordecai told them to reply to Esther. So we've got this back and forth between Mordecai and Esther. Esther's in the palace. Mordecai is relaying the bad news. And he says, do not imagine that you in the king's palace can escape any more than all the Jews. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place, and you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have not attained royalty for such a time as this. God always has his protector. Always has his protector or protectors, keeping an eye on the Jewish people. God always has his eyes on the Jewish people. Mordecai is basically saying, Esther, if you don't act, God will have somebody else, and you will perish. Your lack of action will lead to your perishing. And we've seen that in Jewish history. Haman wasn't the first guy who wanted to kill us. Remember, it was Pharaoh, but there's always been people. Always been people. There was a little guy, those of you who know your Roman history know that Hadrian really was very interested in trying to destroy the Jews because he's just fed up with dealing with them. In fact, in our history as Jewish people, there's people that have literally tried to annihilate us in different ways through the centuries for a variety of reasons. Some of it's economic. The Jewish people have been kicked out of every single European country at one point or another. And that was for economic reasons. Because you kick them out, they can't take their stuff with them. So it benefits the crown. Plus, then you don't have to pay them back what you owe them. In other words, it's economics. The culmination of all this with the Nazis was the worst. In fact, there were Jews who were sent to the camps, and a lot of them just kind of went along. They said, well, it's just another pogrom. Just another time they're going to expel us to a place, and we'll just have to deal with this. They lost everything. The Nazis took everything. The greatest thieves that have ever lived were the Nazis. In fact, there's some great movies been made about it recently. But in the Holocaust, it was the first time that that wasn't the solution. Hitler had a different solution. And that was to just annihilate them, to kill them. Again, captured in the movie so graphically, so horribly. Just kill them. We're not going to reform them. In fact, the whole idea is that Jewish blood in and of itself is tainting. The Jews are less than humans. They're Untermenschen. Less than human. So we must destroy them. And if a person has a certain amount of Jewish blood, they should also be killed, whether or not they identify as Jewish. It's fascinating. You had Jewish people that had assimilated. My father's side are German Jews. You had Jews who become extremely secular, not religious at all. And they were surprised that suddenly the Nazis knocked on their doors. You had Jews who even were Christians, Lutherans, and the Nazis had them killed. Why? Because it became a racist thing. You know, a certain amount of blood, dead. Bizarre. Why? It's evil. It's satanic. You know, there was a guy, an Arab Christian from Israel. Originally, his family is from Lebanon, and when the Israelis, ended that whole Lebanese thing, they allowed a lot of the Lebanese Christians to move to Israel. Remember, Israel is only for Jews, right? No. Quarter of the people that live there are not Jewish. But they had them come because they would have been slaughtered by the Muslims. So they had them come and live in Israel. And this guy wanted to do something. He was a young adult. I think he's 25, 30 years of age, something. He wanted to do something to support Israel after October 7th because of all the college campuses exploding with anti-Israel rallies and everything. And he would go around to different college campuses in America and just simply engage as an Arab Christian living in Israel to try and talk to them and try to help them change their minds and their perspectives. And I read an article from him, and he said it was so difficult. The biggest issue he said, besides the fact nobody listened to him, is the fact that he perceived that many of these people had come to the point of saying that Jews, Israelis, are not really human. How do you so easily kill people? You dehumanize them. If you go to the Holocaust Museum, anywhere almost, in the story of the Holocaust, early on, the Nazis started showing propaganda films showing that Jews are like rats. And they would show pictures of Jews. And, the Eastern European Jews were very poor. And they would show pictures of some of these people. And the Germans, the Germans were the smartest people in the world, greatest society, science, psychology, all these different things, right? And the Jews are seen as, I don't want these people living next to me. Same thing was done, frankly. It's how you get to the 2/3 of a man ruling from the Supreme Court of the United States about African Americans, about black people. If you dehumanize somebody, it's easier to discriminate against them, but also easier to kill them. You almost feel like you're doing the world a favor. That mindset is also what's going on today. When they say on the news that a certain number of people are killed, most of them women and children, you think about those Israelis, they're inhumane. Oh, because they're not really fully human. Do you follow that through? It's interesting today, my wife works at Starbucks. She's sick today, otherwise she'd be here, but she works at Starbucks. And a few weeks ago, she said, yeah, we've slowed down a lot. I say, what's going on? It says there's a boycott against Starbucks. Why? It's a boycott against the company because the founder, the owner, is a Jew. And I'm like, this is crazy. My grandparents were in Germany before the war. They left in 1933. Why did they get the heck out? Because you could see things weren't going to get any better. Jewish businesses were boycotted. Why? Because their prices were high? No. They were simply boycotted because they were Jewish. Do you know that's going on in America right now? Certain groups of people are doing this. Why are they doing this? Because they're evil. But God has his protectors. God is protecting his Jewish people. The one thing I'm fully convinced of is no matter what God will maintain the Jewish people. Not every single Jew. Of course not. We recognize the reality of the evil in our world, but God will preserve his Jewish people. Messiah will come back. It almost sounds like when Messiah comes back, it's going to be a mess, and he's going to finally fix it. Are you prepared for that mess? Are you looking forward to Messiah coming? I think everything we see around us is a reminder that the world in which we live is not the way it's supposed to be, but that Satan runs it, and the world is evil, and it's getting more evil. As followers of Messiah Yeshua, what should we do? First of all, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Nothing is going on that he's not fully aware of. I'm a Gen Xer. I'm a cynic when it comes to a lot of stuff. Skeptical about things. Not skeptical about God at all. The Lord is going to keep his promise. All right? Messiah is going to return, and all this sin and disgusting realities will all be put down. I'm not living my life just to have fun and enjoy myself, because you know what? That doesn't have any lasting value. Do you know that the only thing that matters in your life is what will last for eternity, and that is your relationship with God and everything you do for God in that relationship, okay? Including what you do for others, how you work on the job, being a positive influence in an evil world. Fight the evil by being righteous. Speak up against that which is evil. I hate to say it, but you might have friends. You might even harbor a little bit of anti-Semitic mindset yourself. Well, those Jews, they control all the banks. You do know Jamie Dimon is Armenian, right? The guy who runs Chase Bank, the largest bank in the world. Jewish businessmen are not all that good. My wife's father was a horrible businessman. My uncle was a stockbroker, actually was a big stockbroker back in the 70s and 80s in San Francisco. He lost my father's money. Jewish people are like everybody else, just more so. Some are good, some are bad. Stand up against evil. Be righteous. Hold on to your relationship with God. Strengthen your relationship with God. Be empowered by your relationship with God. Because the world is only going to get worse. I think that that's the case. Who would have thought 5 years ago that Russia would be doing anything? They could barely function as a nation, quite honestly. And now, not only do we see Russia with Iran and China and North Korea. My goodness, folks. We are very close to a probable war. What should we be praying for? We pray for peace. In our nation, what should we seek? Peace. You have political disagreements with people? Try to do it peaceably. Seek truth. Try not to believe everything you see on YouTube. There's so much misinformation. It's weird. Well, this is not my normal message. Oh, well, okay, I got to stop. Okay, very good. But the point I want to and I got through this without crying. That's good. I wanted to change this message up. It's very emotional. Remember talking to my son-in-law is Israeli. I said to my daughter, years ago, you guys should maybe get Israeli citizenship, because it makes sense. I said to my son-in-law's father after October 7th, I said, with everything going on here, I said, can you help them get citizenship in Israel? You may say, why? Because as Jews, there's only one place where we know people generally will like us, and that's Israel. This is reality. My family came here to get away from all the anti-Semitism with this understanding that in America we can be free, we can be who we are, and no one will hate us. We discovered soon on that people still hate us, but they're not going to kill us generally. It's discrimination. There's some missed opportunities, but we're safe. But not necessarily. I don't think things continue the way they are. We're only safe in the hands of the Lord our God. He is our protector. both for us as believers, for us as Jewish people too. So please, just be aware of all this stuff going on. Grow strong in your relationship with God. Again, I thank you for your support and encouragement. I know that you are a community that does care. A lot of Christians, actually, believe it or not, don't care. That's what's weird for all of us. The Jewish community is in a bit of a shock because we thought we had friends in the Christian community, and after October 7th, very little support from the Christian community for Israel. And now it's turned really against us in a lot of places. Please continue to pray. All right, I'm going to close in prayer here. God, we thank you for the fact that you are God, and that no matter what occurs in this world, we know that you are God. And that ultimately Messiah Yeshua will return, and we look forward to his coming. Help us, God, to grow in you and to do all that we can to be useful for you until he comes. And we will wait patiently until then. Again, I thank you for this church, God, and I pray that you would continue to bless them and use them for your glory in this area and all around the world. And I thank you. I pray for Bob, God, help him to get better real quick. But I thank you, too, for the work that I hear him do from time to time, traveling to crazy places like Nepal for he and Cheryl and all those who went with. God, I just pray that effort was amazing despite the sickness. And I pray all this in Yeshua's name.